Well, now that the blueprint is out and everybody's going to be copying the Philadelphia Eagles, we need some big boys up front. So today we're going to be ranking the top 10 interior offensive linemen to dominate and hopefully get our teams to where we want to go, the Super Bowl. At number 10, we're talking about an Iowa Hawkeye. Of course, Owen, you're going to say, Owen, all Iowa offensive linemen turn out to be very productive NFL players, and that's a good argument, right? And that's exactly why Connor Colby is here. A guy that is experienced, 3-year starter, and he plays strictly at the right guard position. So if your team needs a right guard, Connor Colby is going to be your guy. This is a guy that last year had played 320 passing snaps, only allowed 6 pressures and 2 sacks. So the experience is there, the production is there. The only thing that I will say is that he at 6'6", 310, first off, great size, right? At the next level. He's a little bit tall, and that's going to be said for a lot of these guys here on the list today. When you get to 6'6", 6'7", you run into this area where these defensive rushers, right? They can get under you with their pass rushing attacks, and it's a little bit harder for you to, I guess, counter that compared to a guy that's 6'3", 6'4" on the interior offensive lineman. So again, a little bit tall is a little bit of a concern, but Connor Colby, again, experience, size, you're going to be pretty happy with him. Representing the Bulldogs, it's going to be one of a couple on this list today. Their whole interior offensive line is on this list today, just to spoil that. Dylan Fairchild is at the bottom of that. Still very good prospect at 6'5", 315. The size is there, but this is a guy that his play strength is just incredibly violent. And that's why he was second team All SEC. This year, 536 passing snaps with Carson Beck, by the way, but 9 pressures allowed and 1 sack, so a little bit more pressures than you would like. But again, the volume of 530 plus snaps, it's not that bad when you really look at it. This is a guy that does move extremely well. I think he's going to test very well at the combine here in just a couple weeks. But the only thing I will say as a con, he's a bit of a lunger, right? He needs to work on his, I guess, judgment when he's going to make some of these bigger time kill shot kind of a blocks on these pulls there in the game. But outside of that, he's a very solid prospect. A lot of teams will be happy with him. Drew Kendall out of Boston College, a guy that's on 365 snaps this year, only allowed 1 sack and only 5 pressures, which is why he was first team All ACC honors. He moves very well, good leverage. This is a guy that is a lot of the same as Dylan Fairchild. He's a bit of a lunger, right? So this is a guy that is very productive. The size is there, but when he's coming around for some of these kill shots, like I mentioned before, he tends to, I guess, get a little ahead of himself, and that could sometimes blow up a play offensively where the hole's not there, or it's not as big as it should be for the guys running behind him. But Drew Kendall, very solid guard. Wyatt Malum is in the media for the wrong reasons this offseason, because for Senior Bowl weekend, he was probably, next to Jalen Milroe, the biggest loser of the weekend as far as his individual stock. But I do want to say that these scouts are going to reevaluate him. They're going to relook at his tape and say, okay, we can look past Senior Bowl weekend because the production is off the charts. Let's start with saying that he was second team All Big 12 this past season. And on 360 passing snaps, he allowed 0 sacks. That is right? The same amount of sacks that me and you allowed, but we didn't play 360 passing snaps. Regardless, ideal size, the experience is there, the production is there. I think he's a very smart player on the interior. The only things we worry about is his small arm length. And of course, that was exposed in those one-on-one drills at Senior Bowl weekend. But outside of that, everything else is there. It's just, are these teams gonna, how much are they gonna waste Senior Bowl weekend, I guess, is my thing. And I want to see how much that's weighed on these scouts ahead of the NFL draft. Coming out of North Dakota State, Gray Zabel, of course, is next up on the list. And out of over 450 passing snaps, only 7 pressures, 1 sack. And this is a guy that I think will go a lot higher than where I have him on my list and where I guess most people will have them on theirs. Why? Well, because he plays pretty much every single offensive line position. This past year alone, he played at least, I think at least 10 at every single spot on the offensive line. So the versatility is there. And obviously, when you're playing that much, you got to move well. You got to be quick with your hands. You got to be able to adjust. You got to have a good anchor. I think Gray Zabel has the potential to be a great guard, great tackle, really anywhere on the offensive line. Great offensive lineman at the next level. Let's just say that. But I will say this. There is, I guess, a pros and cons with having that much versatility. The con with that is how, we it's good that you could play multiple positions, but are you great at any one position that we can put you out there and no matter what, we're comfortable with you being at that set spot? Again, there's pros and cons with the versatility aspect of it, but Gray Zabel, I know a lot of scouts love him, and he's going to go pretty much, if not day one, he's probably going to go day two and pretty early on in round two. Now, this guy could be a tackle, but I think from what I'm hearing, all these guys at the combine and all these experts, they're thinking he's going to be playing guard at the next level, so that's where I wanted to rank him. Jonah, we'll just leave it at that. I don't want to do harm to this man and mispronounce his last name as badly as my last name is typically pronounced. But Jonah, 6'5", 330 for representing the Wildcats, of course, out of Arizona. He has great size. I think he's a very good athlete. And this is a guy that, with his anchor, does recover very well, right? I think the con to this guy, along with something we'll mention in a moment, is that he doesn't get off the ball as quickly as some of these defensive linemen and as quickly as some of these other offensive linemen. Basically, I think he needs to get a better jump on the snap. And that's, I think, a reason why he has very high hand placement, right? Which has led to 15 pressures this past year, as well as 4 sacks. Also, it's why he gets beat on some of these, I guess, plays more so than you want to see throughout the season. So better get off speed. I'll say that for Jonah. And also just better hand placement. But I will say in his defense, he moved positions a lot this year. He played 2 tackle positions, and then he also moved inside a little bit throughout this year just to, I guess, make up for what this team was lacking and some injuries along the way. Jonah can play a lot of different positions, right? The versatility is there with him. The size is there. And the production is there in the fact that he only had 1 penalty last year, despite having the very high hand placement and getting outside the numbers as much as he did, at least as I saw on tape from this past season. But the production's there, right? There's some technical stuff that you want to work on with Jonah, but I think the potential is that good where you're going to take a shot on him probably in day 2. Tate Ratledge is the second Bulldog on this list. Last year, only 7 pressures, 1 sack. Production is there. In his career as a Georgia Bulldog, he had over 2,000 snaps at the right guard position. So just like Connor Colby at the beginning of the list, I think Ratledge is bona fide to be a right guard at the next level. And unlike, I guess, a guy like Gray Zabel and Jonah, he has a very good get-off speed, a guy that has that quick pop off the ball. And that's going to be pivotal for, these outside zone schemes that these teams love to run now. And at the NFL level in modern day football, if I can talk correctly. But here we go. I think he's very quick off the ball. I think he moves okay. I think he can move better. I want to see how he tests at the combine, but this is a guy that might be the best pass pro offensive lineman in the class, as well as also having the ability to move well in the run game. I think he has the potential to be the best guard in this class, and I'll say that. And that's why I have a top 50 grade on him. I think you like a lot about him, but the cons here, just due to the height being 6'6" and playing guard, defenders get under him. And again, that's not really his own fault. That's just how leverage works here, right? Especially when you're talking about these one-of-one athletes. But for Tate Ratledge, very solid prospect. I think he can go, again, anywhere from day 1 to day 2. I can't see him falling past round 2, to be completely honest with you. His teammate and man in the middle is Jarrod Wilson. He is a true center. I think he's the only true center out of the list today. A guy that on 511 snaps last year. Passing snaps, of course. No sacks allowed. 0. And it's only 6 pressures. So incredible production from Jarrod Wilson on the inside. I think he has good hands at 6'3", excuse me, a good size at 6'3", 310, and he has good hands as well. So there, I'm going to go back to that fact that I just mentioned. The cons that I will say, though, he doesn't have the experience of pretty much anybody on this list. He only has 1 year as a full-time starter, and his play strength can be questionable sometimes, but I don't think he's more so of a powerful kind of an offensive lineman. He's more of a finesse guy, right? He's going to beat you with his hands and his anchor. I'll just say that. But for Jarrod Wilson, true center, if your team needs one, he's going to go higher than we think, kind of like Jackson Powers Johnson did last season. Tyler Booker out of Alabama. No sacks last year on 395. Let's just say 400 passing snaps from this previous season. And that's saying a lot when you got Jalen Milroe running around back there. So incredible season from Tyler Booker. I think the guy's super strong. I'm excited to see what he does on the 225 bench rep. Very agile. I think he might have the highest potential in this class. That's, of course, arguable. The only thing I will say is he's got a penalty issue, right? A penalty bug. We'll say that. He has a tendency to go very wide with his hand placement. And again, that's led to 7 different penalties last year. But in his defense also, he had Jalen Milroe running behind him. Regardless, I think if you want to look at a guy that has all-pro potential, Tyler Booker, I think a lot of people are at least saying he has that. And at number 1 is Donovan Jackson out of the champion Ohio State Buckeyes. Only 2 sacks allowed last year on over 400 passing snaps, so incredible production, and only 2 pressures in the entire college football playoff run. A guy that does bring ideal size, speed, and he might be the most athletic interior offensive lineman in the class this year. So I'm excited to see how he tests, especially after coming off of these hamstring injuries. But I do want to say that he didn't have a great showing at tackle early on this year against Texas. But of course, when they moved him back into the interior due to some injuries up front that Ohio State had, I think he played incredibly well to finish the season, and I think he's going to be a guard at the next level. Now, if he plays tackle, well, we're having a different conversation, but I think he has the flexibility to do both, and I think he can be a great player doing both, and that's why I got a top 10 grade on him. But here is the top 10 list on your screen now with their grades and, of course, their placements for these guys, or at least in my top 50, and one in Donovan Jackson is in my top 10. Now, I will say I think he's number 10, so he might drop, he might go in between my top 25, top 10. Regardless, he's an incredible player. But here is the list on your screen. Let me know some of your favorites in the comments below. And hey, tomorrow, we're going to the defensive side of the ball.